Hello, 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 good people out on the YouTubes. I'm back, man. Not gonna lie, it's been a wild few weeks. I've been a little reticent to get back on YouTube, and I'll explain a little bit in a while. But I am still here. Todd Thinks is still here. I'm still getting buckets. I still am providing cogent analysis for the culture. But I gotta tell you, YouTube, they kind of they took me for a little whirlwind, and so I just decided to take a little break. I think it was a healthy break, a little mental break, because if you are a creator, or if you've ever been a creator or anything like that, the views and the what do you call it, the the likes and the comments and the riding the algorithm wave, the ebbs and flows of, you get a video that does really well, and then you put hours and hours and hours into a video and nobody watches it, right? And then there's YouTube with their thumb on the scale. It could be a lot. It could be a lot. But I'm not going away. I just needed to take a break. I needed to step away. And honestly, it wasn't really planned, to be honest. I didn't say, hey, I'm going to take, nearly 4 weeks off, which is, I think, the last time I uploaded a video was certainly before the Thanksgiving break. But, if you're out there and you're watching, just, say what's up. I'm gonna do my little hello world. Hello world. If you notice my camera, kind of zooming in and out here, it's just new feature. Anyway, I don't know. I haven't been able to figure out. I kind of don't like it. Hello, Miss Vic. Good to see you. Good to see you, Miss Vicky. Miss Vic. I'm not saying your name right, I'm sure, but it is good to see you. Hey, but you know what? A lot has transpired since the last time we chatted. I think the last video I did, I don't even know what the last video I did was, to be quite honest. Some of you might have even caught that I did several shorts that you might have seen, but my last long form video was let's see here. I don't even know. Let's look at the something on Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro. I've been talking about the anti-Semitism and all that stuff. I'm going to circle back to that because I think there is something to be said about this whole anti-Semitism thing, and there's obviously been a lot of cultural happenings in the last few weeks. In particular, as of recent, the university president of Penn, UPenn, resigned, and hopefully we'll get a resignation from the Harvard University president, diversity hire, Dr. Gay, I think is her name is Gay. Is it, could there be more irony there? And I forget who the other, MIT, I think is the other university. The cesspool of wokeness that is the current university system is it's about time they be taken down a peg. So glad to see at least at UPenn they got one of them. So two more to go. But let me just tell you what's been going on with me the last couple of weeks. Basically, I've been trying to figure out how I want to move forward with my channel, and I welcome suggestions and feedback. So the way, if you don't know, the way YouTube works is generally they you put your content out there, right? If people watch it and they like it, then in general YouTube will expose it to more people so that they can also watch it, right? And hopefully that happens enough, you get enough interaction with your content that it gets exposed to a lot of people, and then a lot of people watch it, right? But that's an oversimplified version of it. There's also a lot of other things involved with the nature of your content, which YouTube carefully curates. It is my personal opinion that conservative content from a Christian perspective is something that they would prefer to have less of, not more of, right? So they don't want to cause a kind of proliferation of, content with views they may object to, right? So that is my personal view. I know some people might think that that's a little tinfoil hat, but that is my personal view. but I have been running into a lot of difficulties getting my content out in a broader sense. And so I had to kind of think about what is it that I want to do. If I do a video, right, and it resonates with some people, but then they muffle the reach of the video, then was it really worth it, right? So it's kind of like that whole thing. If a tree falls in the forest and no one was there to hear it, did it make a sound, right? So I asked myself the same question. If you put all this time and energy into videos that no one is going to see, then was it worth the time and energy? And then I had to find myself going, hey, what's going on? What are people talking about, right? So I'm kind of having to find trends in the algorithm, right? Things that people are talking about and hoping I can ride that wave. And then getting to a point where it's just like, well, I know everyone's talking about this, but that's kind of not what I prefer to talk about. But if I don't do a video on it, then nobody's going to watch it. So then I end up doing videos on things that I have only a marginal interest in, but that I want to gain some traction. And of course, I always like to give you content from a Christian perspective, right? Um, given that Christian perspective from a standpoint of cogent analysis, cultural analysis from a Christ-centered lens, right? So I think that almost anything that happens in the culture, we can parlay that into something that we can grow on and learn from a Christian perspective. But at the same time, I have to also, be really into it myself, right? And then if I'm not into it, and then nobody ends up watching it anyway, then I go, what am I doing? So I would, I'd like some feedback. What I would personally like to do, honestly, is to do less stuff that depends on kind of the political happenings of today or yesterday, and talk about things that are a little more evergreen, right? So, for example, one of the things that I like to talk about is, uh, debates with about atheism, for example, atheism and Christianity, for example. Uh, there are lots of great content out there that we can review. I've for a long time. What up? What up, Mr. Jason, Mr. Dear Woke Christian? What's happening, my brother? I didn't even see you, but yeah, I like to do a lot of intellectual stuff, debates, um, things that are not there again so driven by the news cycle and what's happening in the headlines. And so that's what I think my content might. Oh yeah, atheist debates. Yeah, I'm really into it because and I'll tell you why. Because this is the ultimate, I think, oftentimes in intellectual exercises, and that um, sometimes the things that seem complicated are actually quite simple, and you just have to be able to sift through a lot of deceitful tactics and argumentation in order to find what is, what would have otherwise been obvious on the surface, right? And so when you listen to debates, that's a great way uh, to um, to basically sharpen your critical thinking skills. And the name of this channel is Todd Thinks, by the way. So I mean, it's only right. It's only right that we do more thinking stuff. So that's my thought there. That I do more evergreen stuff, and it'd probably mean also that I focus less on quantity and more on quality, right? So I might put out a video every 10 days, right? I do have a job. YouTube doesn't pay the bills, so YouTube doesn't pay anything, from as far as I'm concerned, or very little. So I got to focus on the things that, keeping the main thing. But I do want to bring you great content. So I had to kind of refocus. I had a meteoric rise. For those of you that may not have known, I had a meteoric rise. And I had a couple videos that were, what I call hood viral, right? I call them hood viral because they weren't really viral by like viral standards. To me, like viral is like millions of views, right? But I call them hood viral. They got in the tens of thousands of views, right? Which is for me, pretty good. And so a lot of people came in, and I think that a lot of people came in because they liked what I said on one perspective, and then they realized, oh, this guy's a conservative Christian. I'm not sure if I want to watch his stuff. So there was that, right? So as a relatively new channel, there again, I've only been kind of really doing videos consistently since June of this year. And so growing to almost 6,000 subscribers, which is another issue that's kind of funny. Uh, my subs have been kind of going up and down. So if you recognize that you've been automatically unsubbed from my video or from my channel, just go ahead and resub and then let me know. Leave a comment. Say, hey, I don't remember unsubbing, but I saw that I was unsubbed. I've got a couple of those comments. So that'd be interesting to know. Let me know. All right. So there's one thing I want to talk about today. This is interesting. I don't know if you've been following like the whole situation with obviously the Hamas and Israel conflict has been uh, front and center in the culture, right? I've been talking about it. I've been talking about it probably more than my audience and my subscribers that want me to talk about it, but it's a really important issue. And it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving because there's so much to be gleaned from it. But there's something interesting that I wanted to talk about before I end this stream and this update. And that is the claims of anti-Semitism sometimes really actually do get out of hand. And by that, I mean, sometimes people claim anti-Semitism when actually it's not anti-Semitism. It's just a clear cultural analysis of some of the things that come from the Jewish community. Now, let me set this up for you so you understand what I mean. As a Black person who is a Christian and a conservative, I find myself very often having to confront and criticize Black culture, right? Anybody know? Even my man, Jason, Dear Woke Christian, even he knows that this is the case. As Black people who are Christians and who are conservatives, we have to talk a lot about Black culture. We have to talk about the pathologies that exist in Black culture, the singlehood, the single parent households that are an epidemic in our community, right? Nearly 70% of Black children are born into a home of a single parent, right? So unmarried parents, that's bad, right? The crime, the violent crime, the incarceration rates, and we are not of the persuasion that incarceration is just some function of white supremacy and racist policing tactics. No, there are actual real problems and real violence in Black communities at levels and rates that are not found in other communities. It's just a fact, right? It's just a fact. And the fact that that is the case means that we have to deal with these cultural phenomena that cause these things to proliferate. And so we have to criticize Black culture, right? But I've noticed something that is very interesting about this whole thing when it comes to anti-Semitism, because see, apparently, particularly if you're a conservative and you got some cultural commentary on Black culture, that's apparently fair game. It's apparently fair game. But if you say something about the Jews, can I even say that? Then it's anti-Semitism. We see this all the time. So here's the question. Here's the question of the day. Are there certain cultural markers and pathologies that are present in every culture that are fair game to criticize, right? If you understand what a culture is, it really is just like a very isolated group of people. It's a group where they have a common ethnicity, generally a common culture, language, food, all of that stuff, right? And within those cultures, there's certain pathologies, right? Every culture has their own unique problems, right? And oftentimes the problems that they have are things that only those particular people can solve, right? There's only those particular people groups that can address them, Well, I've already spoken ad nauseum about some of the problems and the pathologies in the Black community. But what about other communities? What about pathologies in the white community? What are some of the things that are prevalent in white communities? I think people try to poo-poo things like when you see things like like mass shootings. If you hear about a mass shooting, what do you immediately think? Who do you envision when a mass shooting happens? And this is not there again. This is not a commentary on some inherent characteristic of whites or blacks or anyone. It's about culture. So the question is, if something is more prevalent, if something happens more frequently in a specific group of people or amongst a specific group of people, then what is causing that? It's a legitimate question, right? It's almost always cultural slash spiritual. And I think that the distinction between culture and spiritual causes are, they're fuzzy, right? I think that generally speaking, um, uh, the spiritual is upstream of the cultural, right? So when you talk about the culture, you're effectively indirectly talking about the spiritual, right? So you have certain pathologies that you see in the black community and the white community, right? And uh, they are legitimate, right? It can't only. My point is, it can't only be black people's culture who's fair game to criticize, right? I think it's a legitimate point. And even when it comes to something like some of the mass shootings, right? I think some people would say, "Oh, wait a minute, Todd," but it's not true that mass shootings are more heavily associated with certain cultures. They might say, "Oh, there's as many mass shootings in the black culture as there are in any." Matter of fact, there might even be more, right? Until you find out that the way they define a mass shooting is four or more people who died in a 24-hour period from a shooting, from a single event. And oftentimes, if there was some sort of drive-by or gang activity, then that would can technically be classified as a mass shooting. But we all know that that's not the same kind of phenomena as when someone walks into a mall and opens fire on people they've never seen before in their lives indiscriminately. That's not the same sort of thing. And I think the reason why it's important to make a distinction between those two things, despite the number of people who are hurt or injured, is that because the causes are cultural, right, i.e., spiritual, then the remedy to them, the way to go about solving it is different, right? You're not going to tell me that the remedy for, a drive-by gang-related shooting where 5 people were hurt or injured is the same thing as, a 19-year-old kid, walking into a crowd of people and shooting 50. That's not the same sort of thing, right? Which brings me to the Semites, right? The Jews. I think that there was something that I saw, and I'm going to try to find it here. There's something that I saw on YouTube, and I think it was on Megyn Kelly's show, where she quite literally they had a conversation on whether or not Elon Musk, who recently come under fire, um, for supposedly anti-Semitic views, right? So Elon Musk, let's see, if you put Elon Musk anti-Semitism post, right, we can find it. And so everyone was saying, "Oh, Elon Musk was being anti-Semitic." All right, so let me see if I can find it here. I think this is interesting because I don't think what Elon Musk was actually doing was, in fact, what they said he was doing. Let's see here. Um, of course, uh, there's always the people who are disingenuous, who don't really have, they just want to see Elon Musk, be tarred and feathered because they don't like the fact that he doesn't suppress conservative speech on his platform. Because the left, that's what they want. They want to basically have, uh, they want to own all the channels of the marketplace of ideas, and they want to suppress ideas that compete with theirs. So let's have a quick look here at this, because I think this is telling here. Let's see here. All right, and I'm gonna share my screen. Oh, well, that's not working. That is not working. Let's go back here. All right. Present. Share screen. Elon Musk. All right. Let's have a quick look here. Let's say what supposedly is anti-Semitic.
Elon Musk, who is certainly feeling the heat tonight from advertisers over at X, the site formerly known as Twitter, after he endorsed a tweet that Jewish communities, this was the tweet, that Jewish communities push the same hatred they want people to stop using against them. And to that message, Elon Musk said, "You have said the actual truth." Interesting that when you try to open the account from which that tweet came, X hides it with a health warning. The computing giant IBM has since suspended its advertising on the platform after its ads were.
Now, what's interesting is that I find it interesting that they don't actually let you see the whole tweet, which, anyone should find curious, right? I think anyone should find it curious that they don't actually let you see the whole tweet. Like, it's a fair question. Why would they do that? Right? Like, why would they do that? I think it's a fair question. All right.
Place next to similarly anti-Semitic posts. In fact, one of them, we're told, that mentioned Adolf Hitler. X said it does not
listen, look at the dishonest and disingenuous way that they presented this.
In fact, one of them, after its ads were placed next to similarly anti-Semitic posts. In fact, one of them, we're told, that mentioned Adolf Hitler.
One of them we're told that mentioned Adolf Hitler. You think a little bit more details might have been warranted there?
X said it does not intentionally place brands next to this kind of content, but we are told other ad buyers are also considering their position. In fact, in the last few hours, we've seen more companies pulling out. Apple and the movie producer Lionsgate, who released their new Hunger Games film earlier today. So, Mick, some context to this. The original post was perceived by the White House and the US media as a reference to this long-time trope that somehow Jews have this secret plan to bring in illegal migrants to weaken white majorities. That's what it's about. The White House said today, "We condemn this abhorrent promotion of anti-Semitic and racist hate in the strongest terms. We all have a responsibility to bring people together." And they are saying that this is the sort of trope that was behind the attack on the synagogue in Pittsburgh. And here we are.
Like, actually everything about what he just said is a lie. what the act, and I'm trying to find it here because I want us to read it together. What the actual tweet said was that there was a person saying, and fairly harsh words, that the Jewish community, which is overwhelmingly liberal, left-leaning politically, they sat back and they were idle and even complicit in basically the demonization of whites. They advocate for principles that basically allowed for whites to be demonized in the way that they now are upset that now they are being unfairly demonized by Hamas and Gaza supporters, right? So this person was saying, I'm not, and I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this, but the person was saying, I'm not interested in now all of a sudden you whining and crying about being unfairly portrayed when you sat back and supported the liberal leftist people who did the same thing to white people. Like you don't get to all of a sudden, all of the anti-white rhetoric that's been basically rampant in the universities and in the media and everywhere. He's like, now all of a sudden you see that it's wrong now when it's aimed at you. The person was saying basically, I am not interested now. All of a sudden, it was basically like a taste of your own medicine. And Elon Musk said, you have said the actual truth. So the question is, and I think basically, I'll try to find the actual tweet later, but basically the question is, why is it that we can talk about, for example, how odd and hypocritical it is that when you see pathologies in the Black community of violence and sexual immorality and murder and all of these things, and then now all of a sudden somebody wants to be up in arms that somebody, and this is a whole nother issue. If you haven't seen the documentary called the Rise and Fall of Minneapolis, or the Fall of Minneapolis, it's about the George Floyd trial and the absolute sham that it was. If you come away thinking anything other than, well, just know that justice was not carried out in the trial of Derek Chauvin. That's another issue. But the point is that if all of a sudden you're going to raise a city to the ground because one Black guy was killed by a cop, then what about the 7,000 Black men who were murdered every single year in the Black community by other Black people? So it's a legitimate question. Like, why is it you turn the whole society upside down when a couple of one or two Black people were killed by a cop, when you got thousands of people being murdered in the hood, and you have this culture of violence and dysfunction? Like, which one is it, right? You can't, the point is, you cannot have selective outrage. You cannot advocate for a thing when one person does it, and then you are acting like it's the worst thing in the history of the world when somebody else does it because their skin color is different. And the question is it or is it not true that Jewish communities are some of the most egregious purveyors of leftist ideology there is? Is it or is it not true? And is it not a fair criticism of Jewish communities more broadly? That's the question. Is it a fair criticism? Is it fair to say? Reasonability, what's going on, my friend? Is it fair to say? There again, I don't understand. If we're talking about like Ben Shapiro, for example, Ben Shapiro, Mr. Facts don't care about your feelings. Okay. And I watched many Ben Shapiro debates where Ben Shapiro would say, he would say to someone who was trying to make the argument that, it's racist to criticize the Black community and to talk about how, the crime and the pathologies. And he would say, no, there's a problem with that. There needs to be a large scale cultural shift. And it's not about skin color, it's about culture. Right? Right. So why is that not racist? Right? For us to make that clear observation when we're talking about the Black culture. But it's not okay to make that clear observation when it comes to the Jews. It's a legitimate criticism. Every culture has their pathologies. Every culture. Black people, white people, Jewish people, Hispanic people, Asian people. Every culture has their thing. their vice, their hang-up, things that are more pervasive and prevalent within their culture than there are in other places, in other cultures. It is not racial, it is cultural. And the idea that Elon Musk was saying something anti-Semitic because he acknowledged a clear trend about American Western Jews, it is a fact. Even people like Ben Shapiro say this. Jews vote and live a totally different way. They vote one way, they live one. They vote these liberal values, everything abortion, everything this, everything that, everything leftist, everything liberal, everything progressive, but they live conservatively. They get married. They rarely have children outside of wedlock. They get careers and they work hard, right? They study. These are all conservative values. These are all conservative things that people are doing. But when they vote the exact opposite. And if you look at a large, portion of the creative brain trust, particularly in Hollywood, and Dave Chappelle kind of alluded to this. He said he said it's like, in Hollywood there's kind of a lot of Jews. It's like a lot. He was trying to say it kind of like, he was like, don't try to hate me. He was saying it, trying to say like, basically, don't cancel me, but it is the truth that a lot of stuff we see coming out of Hollywood is produced at the hands of Jewish people, and most of it is a bunch of woke garbage. Can somebody explain to me why I can say that Nicki Minaj and Lil Wayne are producing garbage that's destroying Black culture, but I can't say that the crap coming out of Hollywood is doing the same? It's mostly Jewish directors, Jewish executive producers, writers. It's like mostly them. Yes, reasonability. It's an observation. Exactly. My point is, it's a fair criticism. It's not anti-Semitic to acknowledge that despite all of the great things and the great contributions, and the same thing can be said about black culture, for example. Black culture, and there's something interesting because Coleman Hughes, who is a person that does a lot of great commentary on Black culture, he made an interesting observation. You think about the overrepresentation of Blacks and the creative and the music space, for example. Like some of the greatest and most influential musicians in the world are Black, right? And you think about the overrepresentation of Blacks in the music business. That says that basically, when you think about the trends and about music and all of that stuff, it doesn't matter if it's jazz or hip hop or all of these different things. Many of these cultural trends, Black people, we make meaningful contributions, right? You cannot deny the creative genius and the creative contributions of Blacks. The same thing you can say about the Jewish people, right? But with that comes a downside. With that sort of influence, there's also a downside, right? Which is to say, there's also a lot of garbage that comes out of these communities and out of these cultures. And it can't be okay if we point it out with Black people, but we can't say anything about the Jews. Okay? It's just, and of course, the YouTube overlords are going to probably say this content is inappropriate. They're going to say something to that effect. They're probably going to make this content. They're going to say this content is not suitable for advertisers and all that stuff. Anyway, I'm just freestyling today. I didn't have anything in particular I wanted to talk about, but I just wanted to say to all of you who are hanging in there, I'm still around. I'm still here. still providing cogent analysis. Hopefully in the future, I'll provide content that is less news cycle driven and more evergreen, things that make you think. By the way, let me know. What do you think? Do you think that there's a double standard when it comes to the criticism of Black culture and Jewish culture or any other culture? Now, we know that we can say whatever we want about white people. That's fine. White people, we can say it's not just that we can say whatever we want about white people. It's that we are encouraged. I mean, if you want to raise your profile in the media landscape, say bad stuff about white people. Say how white people are, I don't even want to say I don't want to say the terms that people use to describe them because they're derogatory, and apparently the YouTube algorithms don't understand context and sarcasm. So I don't want to say them, right? But you can say whatever you want about white people. You're encouraged to demonize white people. White people are bad. White people are evil. White people steal people's land. White people this, white people that, white culture, white privilege, blah, 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 blah. You can say whatever you want to say about white people. And there's a large section, by the way, of cultural conservative people who think that it is incumbent upon us to point out all of the pathologies within the Black community and the Black culture in an effort to remedy those things. Why is it the case that the Jews are off the table? It's a fair question. And I think Elon Musk has been unfairly demonized. Mary says, white is a public enemy number one right now in Black and white elite clubs. Facts, Mary. Well said. I think that it's not okay. I think that if we can comment about the pathologies in Black culture, right? Then everyone should be on the table. Everybody's got their stuff. And Jewish people need to figure out, especially if you're conservative, you need to be like, hey, how come all of this woke nonsense is being produced out of woke Hollywood? And it's mostly from Jewish people. What's happening in Jewish communities that are causing these ideologies, what in my view, these anti-American ideologies to be so pervasive? What's that about? It's a fair question. Well, Mary says, isn't that what the comedians used to be? Everyone was fair game. Yes, it used to be that way. It used to be that way, right? We could make fun of everyone. Everyone could be laughed at. Which brings me to my next point. It brings me to my next point. Lady Ballers. How many of you have seen it? Has anybody in the chat right now, have you seen Lady Ballers, the new comedy movie from the Daily Wire about men playing in women's sports? Because Mary, you make a very, very, very important point. Reasonability says, coming on and giving us an update, always a blessing and informative time. Thank you, Reasonability. It's my pleasure to be back with you guys. I will try not to stay away for so long. But Mary says no, she hadn't seen it. Lady Ballers. So let's talk about Lady Ballers as a cultural phenomenon, right? I like the fact that the movie Lady Ballers was done because it was necessary. I think comedy is a very, very important rhetorical device. It's a very important device in culture. That's why Babylon Bee, for example, has been so successful, because they make fun of things that need to be made fun of. You know, we use the word ridiculous all the time, right? We say something is ridiculous. That thing was ridiculous. But what do we mean? What do we mean when we say it's ridiculous? When something is ridiculous, it is worthy of ridicule. That's what that means. Something is ridiculous, it's worthy of ridicule. So when we make fun of things that are ridiculous, what we're saying is they're worthy of ridicule. They're worthy to be made fun of. And the idea that a man can be a woman or a woman can be a man or whatever, that's ridiculous. It's worthy of ridicule. And so what we need in the culture are people who aren't afraid to ridicule it, to make fun of it. Right? And so the Lady Ballers movie, I think, was important to be made. But I have to say this. Are you ready for this? Hot take here. I saw the movie. I kind of fell asleep on it. I mean, now granted, I was pretty sleepy, but I think all the really funny parts are, for the most part, on the trailer. It just wasn't that funny. I mean, I hate to say it, but it just wasn't that funny. And I'm all about, us making the culture. It's almost like we're at this stage right now where, with conservative media is kind of a new thing, right? Because basically all of the media was basically controlled by people who were left leaning, for the most part, mainstream media. And so now that we're kind of breaking away and realizing, hey, we need content that isn't, absolutely crazy or ridiculous, as I mentioned earlier. And so we're at the stage where making conservative content now is kind of in its infant stages, right? And that's what Daily Wire is trying to do. And I appreciate it. But it's kind of like where Christian music was, say, 20, 30 years ago, right? Where there was a lot of good music, but it was still, from a creative standpoint, because there was such a smaller pool of creative people, and because there wasn't as much experience in the creative process and not as many resources. Oftentimes, whenever people would see Christian content, they would always, say it wasn't very good, and often it wasn't very good. If we're keeping it all the way 100, right? It wasn't that great. But it's important that we get started, right? Because as Christian media has gone along, it's gotten better and better and better. And now there's often, from a quality standpoint, there's often very little difference between, what you might see in the mainstream, especially on the music front, right? I think it's pretty. The idea that Christians can't make good music, I think that's kind of a silly, kind of outdated trope. And I think that now we're doing really good things. But I think that's where we are with conservative media. And I think you just have to know what happened was is that people would go support the movies because of the message, right? They would say, well, I support this because it's good content, and everyone would pretend to like it even though it wasn't that good. Right? So that's what we're doing right now. That's what we're doing with conservative media. The same thing we did with Christian content, 30, 40 years ago. It was just like, yes, this is made by a Christian, artist or writer or filmmaker or whatever. So we're going to all go support it because we want to see more of it. Right. And I think that's just what it is. We have to support it, not because it's, so great, but because we want to see more of it. And I'm about that. So although I will say that the Lady Ballers movie was just not very funny, in my opinion, I was happy to support it. Right. And I'm glad it was made. And hopefully, when we fast forward 10 to 15 years from now, there'll be such great content from the conservatives' perspective that there will be virtually no difference in the quality of the content. And by the way, the left and the mainstream, they've gone the other way, by the way, because what they've done, if they've become a parody of old style Christian music, their message, right, is wokeness, right? And say they don't care how terrible the content has to be so long as the message is there. Not what used to be the knock on Christian content, right? It's just like, they didn't even hardly try on the content, on the creativity, on the quality of the production, because it was all about the message, right? And that's what we see in the mainstream media right now. And as kind of the most recent case is the Marvels. movie, nobody liked that movie. It was absolutely ridiculous. It's the pinnacle of MCU, completely garbage, right? But everybody was on it because they said, oh, girl power, right? That's why the movie was made. The movie was made as an ode to the boss chick themes of wokeness and feminism, and it completely sucked. And I'm so happy that it bombed because I want them to make good content again. Mary says, remember Stephen Colbert roasting President George Bush, and people laughed at it, but it was uncomfortable. He got his liberal barbs in. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, Mary. I am actually talking about like fiction, just just general Christian movies, content, Christian stories. They would often have a good message, right? But the movies themselves were not very good. If in other words, if the message wasn't there, you probably wouldn't watch it, right? If it was just a regular mainstream, quote unquote secular film without, a good Christian message, would you have spent your money to watch it? That's what I mean. So yeah. But yeah, we, as far as nonfiction content, we've been doing that well for a while. But I think even now, though, Christian content more broadly has gotten much better, even on the film side. Obviously, I mean, we can't count like the Sound of Freedom movie. That I wouldn't say that's a Christian movie. It's more of a mainstream movie, but certainly Christian themes, Christ-centered themes, and the movie itself was great. I thought it was an excellent movie. I thought the production was great. I thought it was well shot. I thought it was a great story. But yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to hop on here, let you guys know, I am back. I am around. I don't know if you guys noticed that I did cut my hair. So feel free to comment on that. But let me know. What would you like to see moving forward? What kind of content would like? Once again, I'm trying to get away from the news cycle type content. I had done a lot of that. Like I said, I had a couple that were kind of, hood viral, but I want to do more evergreen content, more intellectually stimulating content, more scripture, apologetics, things of that nature. So look forward to that. And just let me know. Yes, Mary, you noticed right away. Well, I had to do it. My wife was starting to complain. She was just like, I don't like, it was getting a little unruly. I needed to start over. So, it was actually a little bit shorter than this. This is actually about a couple of weeks of growth. So, starting over in the winter is tough. All right. Well, good people. I am going to get going. I thank you everyone for tuning in. And, it's always good to see the Todd Thinks community. Once again, like, subscribe, share, be on the lookout for more content coming up shortly. And I will say till next time, friends, God bless you.